the more guilt that we could produce in white people, the more things we could get, and therefore the more power we could have.
Okay, I'm sorry. I gotta interject here real
Crazy.
quick. This is
Yeah.
mind blow. This video is gonna be on point. This is gonna be fire. Okay, all right. So I want to introduce the folks out there. Hopefully, this is not your first time, and you guys got a chance to see Amelia and I's first video. You guys will love it, and you'll realize why she's back here. So for everybody who hasn't seen that video, make sure to go watch that, and then come watch this one. It'll give a little bit more context. Now, that being said, Amelia, thank you very much for coming back.
Thank you for having me. I love coming on this channel, so
I
I'm excited
appreciate
to
it.
be here.
Yeah, you'll be a regular. Like, there's no doubt about it.
Good.
So you introduced a necessary evil into my life. So this is a book titled The Devil and Karl Marx. And I have been absorbing this thing for the last 2 weeks. Like since you gave me the heads up, yo, you need to get into this. Got myself a copy and I essentially could not put the thing down. Right.
Mhm.
As disturbing as much of it is, I knew it was necessary for me to really delve into this thing as opposed to being surface level with my understanding of Marxism.
Mhm.
And so the first question I'm going to ask you today is when did you find out that you are a Marxist?
V That's a good question because it was actually when I read this book because
Mm,
I really didn't know that, and I think that, there's a lot of people, not a lot, but, like, you get a couple of randos, in the comment sections of my videos where I talk about this, specifically this book, and
mhm,
I interchangeably use the word leftist, liberal,
mm,
Marxist,
yeah,
and it's because most of us don't understand that our political view, our worldview, and our self conception are often Marxist built.
mm,
They've been created and constructed around Marxist ideas.
mm,
And that was only brought to my attention when I read this book. And
wow,
Paul Kanger, who is the author of the book, goes
mhm,
into such deep history
yeah,
of the origins of Marxism, of Marx himself as a person, and all
mm,
of the many, many extrapolations that are so far removed from the origin that you often don't know that those are the waters that you're swimming in.
right.
So it was really just a couple of years ago.
So it's interesting because, like, I was seeing this imagery of this kind of axle of evil or axis of evil, which was you have academia, you have activism, and I'm still looking for the other A. I'm sure we'll come up with it. I guess,
Mhm.
I'm not going to throw a million there because you have
Right.
escaped.
Yeah,
You have
please don't.
escaped. But
Yeah.
but we definitely have the two, which is you come from the world of academia and you come from the
Mhm.
world of activism, which have
Mhm.
become almost inseparable at this point.
Yes.
And so, I want to dig a little deeper than we did the first time around into the world of academia. And did
Mhm.
that lead into your activism? And, you could really unpack that. Floor is yours.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. So I think that a lot of people who grow up in maybe dysfunctional families or
Mm,
dysfunctional neighborhoods, you grow up seeing that things aren't right and you want to
mhm.
make them better.
Yeah.
That for me, that's what my longing was as a child, was to heal the world and make it better,
Yeah.
and in doing so make my life better, bring some stability and goodness to my world.
Mm,
And I didn't know how to do that. No one was talking about how to do that. So I just always found myself searching for who are the people who are doing that. And
mm.
I when I was coming into college age, there were new fields that were cropping up called things like, social justice, social change as degree
Okay.
programs. And I
Mhm.
was like, well, this is naturally where I fit in. And at that point, I had also been getting into, the private school scholarship worlds, in that
Mm.
these are often highly leftist, kind of like Mequon school, if you've ever heard of that,
What is that?
style of
Mequon.
education. Maybe that's too specific, but
Uh-uh.
essentially it is almost like a Montessori school style where
Okay.
the students lead. So that's like ding ding ding, this is already, you
That's
should
sus.
know.
Okay.
Yes, this is already a Marxist framework for education,
Yeah.
based in like Paulo Freire and these kinds of
Mhm.
Marxist thinkers who were involved in the education system and creating Marxist pedagogies.
Okay.
So teaching people how to it sounds really nice on the surface. It's like teaching students the love of learning and teaching them how to teach themselves.
Mhm.
And it's very egalitarian. You call your teachers by their first names, for example. Um, and for a kid like me who came from my background and was struggling in different ways, struggling to thrive in a traditional educational system.
Mhm.
This environment seemed really appealing to me. And because of the diversity values of these
Mhm.
systems, oftentimes low income students of color were targeted and ushered in. So it was a very small subsect. But it was a subsect nonetheless of people who were like me who end up in these systems in high school and then into college. So
Okay.
in these extremely liberal leftist, heavy leftist academic environments like Hampshire College, where I eventually went, um, a lot of young people of color are brought in under scholarships and then indoctrinated
Mhm.
with these extremely leftist worldviews. And unfortunately, when this is all you are given for an education, you think that these are facts and you think that this is reality, not
Mm.
knowing that a lot of this stuff is purely ideological. And they are laundering in ideas by labeling them academic, by labeling them as research and ideas that are well documented and real facts, but actually they're purely ideological nothingness that are
Mm.
just printed, which makes them feel real. So yeah,
So
that's kind of my academic background.
so I want you to get into the experiential aspect. Like, what was it like at the school? What are you learning? How are they engaging with you? You know what I mean? Like, give us a sense of the room in essence.
hmm So and we're talking about this is at Hampshire College
Yeah.
or okay. So by the time I got to Hampshire College, at this environment, it's continuing in that same thread, that
Mhm.
same pedagogical style. So there's no grades. You don't call anyone
Huh?
professor. It's all first name.
Wait, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Run that back. There's no grades?
Yes. They
That would have been
write
my kind of school right there. What?
exactly. Sounds kind of nice. They write basically essays,
Mhm.
responses to how you are as a student in their class. And yeah. And so
Okay.
yeah, there is an incentive for students to want to go because if you feel like you can't hack it in a typical system, this
Mm.
is kind of a system that instead of pushing you to be better and have excellence, it meets you at your insecurity and you don't actually have to become better or learn anything because it's very
Mm.
easy to maneuver and fake the funk, as they say. So,
Wow.
in these environments, a lot of times there aren't even really disciplines.
Mhm.
Um, there's more so vague, mushy topics that
Okay.
you know the course names will be like a paragraph long and it will be really abstract like feminist inclinations in microbiology as seen through the lens of Black
Queer.
womanist, queer
Mm. Mm.
lesbians of the 1920s. Like this will be a
Okay, you gotta
course,
throw a date
okay?
in there. Oh
This
my.
is
Okay.
this would be like a whole course. And
That's the
as
course. The
students,
name is the
yeah,
course. Yeah, that's the
yes,
entire
as students, this is your end product as well, will look something like this. It'll be like a capstone or a thesis project that will
Mm.
have some kind of other similar ridiculous title. And from that, you know, you're supposed to be going into the world with this lens, often centered on the subaltern. So, this is a
Mhm.
perspective of education that is looking at other ways of knowing
Mhm.
because the dominant way of knowing which is, based in logic, reason, research, science, is white supremacist. So you have to find who are the people in the room that have the least amount of power.
Okay.
You go seek them out, you listen to them, and their truth, so not to say the truth, their truth is the truth that you are going to be basing your understanding of reality off of, and your solutions to the world's problems off of. Because when the least of us are uplifted, then
Mhm.
we're all liberated. It kind of goes back to that moniker, the activist moniker. So
Mhm.
the activist slogans are actually what kind of shape the pedagogy and the knowledge base, for these kind of academic activist environments.
So I want to touch on something and then get to something else because you
Okay.
said that they don't grade you, but they give you an analysis of how you're showing up.
Mhm.
That is so deeply troubling to me.
It is.
I mean,
This is
you are
shaping leaders.
thank you. You are crafting and molding this compliance to the system inbuilt, right? A
Mhm.
grade is, it's egalitarian, right? It's like it is what
Mhm.
it is. You got the F, you got the F. Now, of
Right.
course, maybe not in some of these, work classrooms, but
Right.
in traditional education, you take the test, you get the score, there's your result. Here,
Mhm.
there's no test, there's no well, maybe there is a test, but there's no real result. It's just who you are. So it's back to the
Mhm.
identity thing. So are
Mhm.
you like transforming and configuring yourself to like fit it? Do you feel that?
Well, that's the thing. So when I first came into the campus, coming
Mhm.
from this very liberal background that I came from, very liberal parts of Philadelphia, very, but by liberal, I'm indicating a kind of more basic level of
Mhm.
leftism where it's like LGBT rights,
Yeah.
interracial relationships, basic levels of racial awareness, a lot of kind of Hotep style of wokeness, which is
Yeah.
more like about Black empowerment,
Mm.
more of like a Malcolm X style resentment towards whiteness and white systems, but
Yeah.
um, still like more functional, more normal for that time. But
Okay.
then I go into this environment and it's much more overtly Marxist, which I didn't have that language up until very recently. So I didn't know that
Mm.
that's what was happening. But what I mean by that is that everything is about not just criticizing capitalism, but seeing capitalism as the destructive force in the world.
Okay.
That is at the center stage. And right there with capitalism being the pinnacle of evil in the world is whiteness.
Mm.
That is the other major thing. So this is already Marxist critical race theory, which if we get into a deep dive, is a Marxist theory. And then
Mhm.
queerness. So heterosexuality, the family system, Christianity, all of these things are the three evils. Talk about an axis of
Yeah.
evil. In this way
There
of
you go. Yeah.
thinking, these are the evils of the world that need to be eradicated. And
Mm.
basically, if you want to get your social justice degree because you want to change the world and make the world a better
Yeah.
place, which, I didn't get into detail about this, but like the ills of what I experienced, let's say in my neighborhood, was more like typical urban violence that you would see: gun
Mm.
violence, knife violence, death at a young age,
Yeah.
drug addiction, drug overdoses, picture Kensington type environments, picture North Philly type environments. Like, this is what I was hoping to be addressing. And
Yeah.
so I'm seeking out the answers to how do you make this better? And these are
Wow.
the people who are positioning themselves as the people who have the answers to that. It's that the system is evil because of capitalism, white people, and heteronormativity slash Christian values.
Yeah.
And that needs to be destroyed. When we can topple these systems, that's when we can uplift from the very bottom up,
Mhm.
and the ships will rise through that. So that was kind of the framework of it. And coming in, it's like a major culture shock. So first of all,
Mm.
there's a llama farm on campus. So this is very rural. And the only
Mhm.
thing that is surrounding it are other highly leftist campuses. So it's called the Five College Consortium. And so you're allowed to take courses on those different campuses, but there's no escaping. You just almost go from one extreme to the next extreme.
Mhm.
And essentially, that's how the indoctrination happens, and there's no real life. In Philadelphia, there's a lot of universities, but there is a real world that surrounds it. Like,
Right.
life is real outside of those campuses. But in that five college consortium area of Western Massachusetts, it's just it feels like a totally false bubble that you're living in, and there's no
Is that
escaping it.
intentional? Did they create this sort of, because it almost seems like a commune sort of
Yeah.
environment. You're off in the
Yes. And that's
farmlands
their
and
ideal. Yeah,
uh-huh.
and I mean, I don't have the history right now that I can draw on, but I do know that these environments are quite old, and
Okay.
they often did. I mean, Hampshire College itself is very young. I think it
Mhm.
was founded in like the 60s or something like that. But
Of course.
um, Smith, Mount Holyoke have older histories, and a lot of them are the foundation points, and then things sprout out from those foundations.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so coming in, there was a major culture shock,
Mm.
especially with the queerness stuff. I was like, this,
Mhm.
I don't even understand what this means, but that was where the
I still
heaviest.
don't.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't
Yeah.
It turns out they don't also know, and they're just building the plane as they fly. So
Mm.
coming in, that was actually where the heaviest, and most intense cult-like brainwashing happened,
Mhm.
where there was so much social hostility around this idea of queerness. And at that point, I had already been questioning my sexuality and feeling like I probably wasn't straight. And,
Mm.
um, but I also didn't know what queerness was.
Yeah.
And, um, eh, I was just very confused about it. But it was also like, if you were going to be a part of this community, you pretty much had to be queer. So there was a moment where and what queerness meant. So we don't know what it means, but
Okay.
essentially it is this everything is
Yeah.
anti-capitalist, anti-white, and heterodox. So,
Everything but Auntie
um,
Jemima, right?
right,
Mhm. Yeah.
exactly. So, so essentially, as even if you were a woman,
Mhm.
a cis, meaning like you were born the gender that you were born, you are the gender that you were born.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and you were dating a male who was born a
Mhm.
male, as long as you said that you were queer, you were safe. But if you were someone who actually was a lesbian who dated other biological women, then you were actually oppressive. So this is how warped this system was. And
Wow.
so you either got on it or got, smashed and were totally isolated in this already very isolating environment.
Mm.
And and there was this constant pressure, therefore, to perform your queerness, to perform your anti-whiteness, to perform your anti-capitalism. And we see in modern woke culture what that has resulted in. That
Mm.
was what, 15 years ago since I was in university, something like that. And we have now seen what 15 years of that mentality has done to my peers, and most of them have nothing to show, in terms of, let's say, property ownership, home ownership.
Mm.
People like to say that it's the environment, but and the economics of the situation, but
Sure.
a lot of it is mentality. A
Yeah.
lot Most of it is mentality, and
Yeah.
the facts that they were made to feel that owning property is wrong, that it's
Mm.
impossible because the system is against them. So instead of learning how to do it, they rejected it outright. And now, so many
Mm.
years into the way that economic systems work, now they can't afford to buy property. They would have had to get started on that 10 years ago in order for that to
Yeah.
work. Now it is going to be really hard. This type of stuff. Um, in terms of families, and many of us don't have families, don't have marriages, don't have
Mm,
um, any way to even begin that process because we have been talked into believing that marriage is evil and oppressive, especially heterosexual marriage, but
yeah.
in general, and that families are also oppressive things that should be avoided at all costs.
Mm,
Um, and in terms of race relations, we see where it's gotten us.
yeah.
Most of the people in that community have horrible race relations, even though many of them are in interracial relationships. The dynamics inside of those relationships are filled with resentment, bitterness, power
Mm,
games, and victim games. And, within their friendship circles, a lot of them
yeah.
have many interracial friendships, and the same dynamics of bitterness, dysfunction, resentment, betrayal
Mm,
are deeply interwoven into them. So, and then obviously, not to mention the actual policies that we advocate for are utterly backwards and self
mm,
destructive. We see that in the whole premise of defund the police.
yeah.
And now crime is at an all-time high.
Mm,
Decriminalization. Now you can't go into a CVS without everything being behind bars because
yeah.
the theft became so insane because of the decriminalizing of basic crimes like
Yeah.
shoplifting.
Yep.
In the leftist worldview, that was justice work because people were getting arrested for theft, and it's like, well, they needed that shampoo because they were starving,
Did
and
you see
it's
this recent video from the ghetto queen of Congress? I like to call her Jasmine Crockett.
Yes.
Did you see
Yes.
this
No,
thing?
I didn't see this though, but I know
She
her.
said this is look. She said, "Okay, just because you commit a crime doesn't
Mhm.
make you a criminal, okay?
Right.
You see, criminality is a mindset. Okay, so if you
Yes.
don't have that mindset, you're not a criminal
Yeah, I don't
unless you're white.
identify as a criminal,
Unless you're white.
okay? And
But
don't
so
stigmatize me as one.
the reason I dropped that in there is because what you're pointing to is like for folks outside of these blue cities or blue states, like you're from Philly.
Mhm.
I grew up in San Jose in California, the Bay Area. So
Mhm.
we had deodorant behind cages. Some folks
Mhm.
don't know what that is. They still get to go to their
Mhm.
Walmart and everything is kosher as usual, right? So, you breaking this down, we're going to get into the nuances of this thing because
Mhm.
like why do they think this way, why do they think that taking away the police and decriminalizing and how it's even the ethos for many of them who like okay there's as it speaks of in the book there are those who are the activators and then those who are like the useful idiot, right? And
Yes.
this is as early as the entire concept of communism.
Mhm.
So when you're speaking of these people who are pushing these policies, are is this being pushed by people who genuinely want to create a worse world, or is it like people like you who then got caught up with all the right intentions, but then the
Mhm.
wrong vehicle, and then you end up in this
Yes.
place? Like, how did this
Yes.
end up happening? More specifically, where you're from?
Yes. So that was the thing about the book that
Mm-hmm.
finally answered the questions that I had because my my historical memory, and what I was taught since I was taught all of this false propaganda
Yeah.
pretty much extends to like, okay, basic histories of slavery that
Mm,
a lot of it is, I'm coming to find out, like a manipulation or a
yeah.
lie or a twisting of truth. Um, or most commonly exterior of truth, like or yeah, an exterior of truth, and then just a thin veil around a whole big lob of lies like
Yeah.
that. It's being used as the Trojan horse to bring a lie in.
Mm,
Um so and a lot of it is based off of emotional truths. That's how they
okay.
really get us, I think. They bring in emotional truths, and that is actually enough to be the veneer that covers up the lies that are the ultimate Trojan horse.
Hmm.
And the history that was really most profound for me was getting into Manning Johnson, who was a
Mm-hmm.
communist in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And he ultimately came out in around the 1950s, when he exposed essentially that the Marxists had infiltrated Black movements for civil rights and social justice
Yeah.
that were, and I use those terms loosely because in the 1930s, it was like a different scene than it became in the 1960s.
Right.
So in the 1930s, people were really having some very serious issues that were going on
Mhm.
of racial injustice, racial violence, and things like that. And the communists infiltrated those movements and then took them over. Um, Playing on those emotional truths of injustice and
Mhm.
then warping that and manipulating those people into using their legitimate movements to bring forward Marxist ends. So
Mm.
really what that means when that happens, instead of finding practical solutions that are real, that could
Mhm.
actually satisfy your discontent, when
Mhm.
what happens when a Marxist takes it over is that they will just actually inflame the divide more and more and more and more and more. No solution will ever be good enough. And in
Yeah.
fact, they will start pursuing solutions that will only create more divide, more victimization, more dependency, so that the discontent swells. The reason they want to
Mm.
do that is because they're actually working not to find solutions or true justice, but to break and divide the nation
Yeah.
and uh, topple it from within. So
Mm.
instead of, because they weren't actually, the communists were not actually strong enough to take the United States down,
Mm.
what they did was try to infuse it with the poison of bitterness, resentment,
Mm.
etc., using the Black population, the progressive Christian population as
Mhm.
the very strongholds, and women
Yeah.
um, as strongholds, and then poison their movements, take them over in leadership positions, and then
Yeah.
implode them from within. And that's how the civil rights movement ended up becoming what it was, which was
Mm.
ultimately actually pursuing very socialistic
Yeah.
um, ideas, policies, etc., instead of actually finding solutions that would empower the Black community. So it's a long, sordid history. I highly
Yeah.
recommend people read this book. They
Mhm.
get Manning Johnson's book, Color, Communism, and Common Sense, which is highlighted in this book, as
Mhm.
well as watch the film Uncle Tom 2.
Yeah.
If you just do those three things, you'll get a much better grasp. But it's a very big and sordid history.
So I guess it's probably time now to get us to definitions. What is the clinical definition of communism? And then can we get into what it's morphed into? Because you kind of made a reference to that, right? Is in the 1930s, it
Mhm.
showed up different than 1950s and on. So we
Yes.
have this classical communism, and then we have obviously the modern cultural communism. So
Mhm.
what is that? What is communism?
Yes, I'm gonna bring up my notes
Okay,
because
beautiful. Let's do it.
I am not one of those people who have perfect recall.
Nah, you
Um,
do. Don't even folks like Yeah, you got like citations in your head. It's crazy.
right. But definitions are tricky. Definitions are tricky. So I think that what could be helpful is going
Mhm.
through the 10 points of communism
Let's do that.
as outlined by Karl Marx and
Yeah.
Frederick Engels
Okay.
in the Communist Manifesto, which was written in 1848. Because
Mm.
this is the thing, I'm just a person who was miseducated, but
Yeah.
thankfully taught to read and write.
Yeah.
And so with those
That's good.
skills, I have had to go and re-educate myself. And so like
Mm.
there is absolutely no shame in looking information up
Yeah.
and going to the source and trying to figure this out. This is what we have to do.
That's
Our
right.
survival is like truly reliant on our willingness to do it. So the
Mm.
tenets, just to do a very high level highlight:
Okay.
abolition of private property. This
Mhm.
is one we a lot of us know. Heavy progressive or graduated income tax. So basically everything you earn is owned by the government. The
Mm.
idea of that is that it will trickle down and everyone will contribute and it'll be a utopia. But we know from how communism has played out in real life that is a lie. The lie
Yeah.
detector determined that was a lie. Okay.
Cap.
The next one is abolition of all rights of inheritance, which is ironic because Karl Marx and Frederick Engels both lived their entire lives off of their wealthy families' inheritance. So, contradictions, they abound. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. So, that would be anyone who doesn't want to participate in this system would
Mm,
be totally persecuted, put in prison, death
yeah.
camps, labor camps, which is to say, made slaves,
Yep.
okay? As well as everyone else in society is a slave, because if that is your option, then you are a slave to this system,
Mm,
okay? There is no freedom. And all of their property would obviously be taken by force. The
yeah.
centralization of credit in the hands of the state. So
Ah, that's
that
not sus.
way,
Mhm.
as well as communication and transportation, as well as factories, any modes of production. So that's everything in society is owned by the state. So if you are on the wrong side of the state, if a person in a position of power in the state is someone who doesn't like you or you don't
Mm,
like them, if you have a different opinion than the state, that means that everything in life can be switched off. Okay. There's an on off button and it's pushed down for you. So you don't have
wow.
any recourse, any property, any mode of communication, any mode of transportation, any freedom again. Um, so that covered a few of them. Equal obligation of all to work. So even though Marx didn't work a single day in his life,
That's right.
and actually clearly in his writing had a tremendous amount of resentment towards the idea of work, and
Mm,
actually felt in his theory of alienation that because of capitalism, man had become alienated from each other, from his labor, and from the products of his labor. um that the idea of work itself was wrong and bad. Um but in the system of Marxism, of communism, there's an equal obligation to work, which again reinforces this slavery mindset,
yeah.
and this slavery obligation of everyone in society. And you don't choose your work. That work is assigned because said earlier, everything is controlled by the state.
Mm,
And then a full control of all agriculture, which means that if the state messes up, makes a mistake, that trickles down over everything. And we saw what that means in like Maoist China, for example, that resulted
mhm,
in a mass famine because when something is centralized, if it's doing something wrong, everything dies.
mm,
And millions of people starved to death.
yeah.
That also happened in Russia, Cambodia, many other systems, as well as control over education. So that is what communism is. And it's not even mentioned here, but a core tenet of communism that I never even truly realized or understood is the abolition of religion. That is a
That's right.
core thing, and that I think is the most important part of this book.
And it is the most consistent throughout every single communist regime, right? Is if they
Mhm.
got to one thing, it was definitely the religious aspect. But I want to, I guess, ask a question that spawned during that breakdown is what is the appeal? Like, as you're reading that out, it is so obvious that this is a totalitarian system. This is all
Mhm.
controlling mechanism used to, like
Yeah.
you said, enslave people. So why is it that there is a generation and you find yourself, I mean, you too smart to stay in this thing, but you have
Thank you,
people who,
but
yeah,
dumb
you
enough to
got,
get in it, so
well, exactly, yeah, dumb enough to get in, smart enough to get out. So what is it that appeals to and I see the shift has happened majoritively in our generation. Like, yes, it's been, 100 years of conditioning, but it's really kicked into high gear in the last generation or two. I
Mhm.
see it in millennial, I see it in the zennials, and, the alphas is still in brain rot world. So,
Yeah.
we'll see where they end up. Hopefully the brain
Yeah.
rot sort of does an opposite effect, a
We're
ricochet
rooting
effect
for
there.
you.
Yes, we are. Yes, we definitely are. So, yeah, what is the appeal for somebody living in a capitalist society that has benefited from capitalism their entire existence for them to fall into that trap?
Resentment,
That's good.
bitterness, And also not the reality that a lot of the people who fall into this
Mhm.
are coming from wealthy, privileged backgrounds. Marx and Engels themselves were wealthy, privileged men who never had to work.
Yeah.
And so that didn't stop Marx from living in total and utter poverty, but that's a different subject that was of his own making because
Yeah.
he literally spent down aggressively everyone else's money around him,
That's right.
including his family's money, including his wife's family's money, because his wife
Mm.
also came from a wealthy background,
Mhm.
and ended up living in utter squalor,
Yeah.
trash, dirtiness. His
Yeah.
body was covered in boils and warts from the fact that he refused to shower.
That's right.
Okay? This was a sick man, and
Mhm.
to imagine and he was extremely abusive and negligent to his family, his
Yeah.
wife, and the maid that he
Lechen?
basically kept as a slave. Go ahead, sorry.
Mhm. I was like, "No, talk about Lechen." They don't talk about
I mean,
Lechen. Talk about Lechen.
and this is who people are following, and they don't even know that this
Yeah.
is the man that they are basing their life decisions off of.
Yeah.
Someone who behaved this way, who couldn't even get up enough will to go to the funeral of his father or
Yeah.
his wife when they died,
Yeah.
people that he had mooched and lived off of their entire lives. And just to finish that thought on the woman who lived as an unpaid maid in
Mhm.
his house, he had a sexual affair with this woman and
Yeah.
fathered her bastard child,
Mhm.
whom he made Frederick Engels take responsibility for as the father, so that his marriage could stay intact. And obviously, anyone by today's standards would consider that exploitation,
That's right.
rape via power, uneven power dynamics,
Yeah.
slavery. Like, what are we talking about here? This is crazy. This is who we're following. So sorry to go off on a tangent, but
No, 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 no. This is
no
necessary
one
because
talks about it.
there's going to be a separate episode. Like again, the story of Lechen is the one that really latched me into this thing and said, "Oh,
Yes.
oh, we're missing the main character."
Mm-hmm.
Because I put out a video not too long before I started this, a little short, and I said, "Isn't it interesting how when you see most of these protesting leftists, right, ice out or whatever else they got going on, you can almost smell them through the lens. Like, that's how I feel. So,
You got a
you
good
know
sense of what
yes,
they
I
might
can
smell
al
like.
like, there's a certain scent they're giving off, yeah, and so when I started getting into Marx and his living habits, or I guess just
Mhm,
his daily or lack thereof, hygienic habits, his way of dealing with the world around him. Essentially, he was lazy, right, at his core, which makes
mhm,
sense for the ideology. He was entitled, makes sense for the ideology, and he didn't want to get up and take a shower. Let's just be real,
mhm,
right? And so I
mhm.
said, "Oh, so he produced more of himself." Right? It's a
Yes.
like his core audience
Yep.
is Karl Marx. So,
Mhm.
okay, so getting back to the appeal of these same people
Yes.
is you said you see resentment, which is brilliant observation. Um, but you also said there's another aspect of it, right? Because you had sensitivities and you cared about
Mhm,
things and you thought you were fixing real problems.
mhm, mhm. And just to also piggyback on that thought really quick,
Okay.
it's narcissism because he's also
Yes.
abusive. That's throughout the book. He's an
Yeah.
abusive person to his family and friends and
Mhm.
everyone around him.
Yeah.
Thi he was clearly a narcissist,
Yeah.
and every characteristic that you just described, we just discussed,
Mhm.
are tenets of narcissism.
Mhm.
And in terms of what it creates, when you don't realize that the person who has shaped your identity and the world that you're living in and your ethos
Yeah.
was a malignant narcissist himself,
Yeah.
you transform into that without realizing it. And we see that no matter how many different ways Marxism mutates itself,
Yeah.
it always produces the same type of person. And we should be aware of that because we're all very much in danger of following in those footsteps. And it's
Mhm.
a much deeper conversation, I agree. But so in terms of the appeal, so you have the privileged people who have never had to work and don't have to understand what life is really like. And I think
Mm.
that through modernization, especially, we forget what life actually was like before we had, capitalist economic systems and all
Yeah.
of the infrastructure that built for us. I
Right.
think that the quickest way to get to this is actually by watching any of those survival TV shows, okay? Naked and
That's good.
Afraid, the
Mm.
frontier people who go live in Alaska off the grid.
Mm.
Um, every day that you live like that, your life centers around survival
Mm.
because every day you're constantly at a deficit.
Yeah.
And life is competition for resources. That's how
Mm.
it's always been. That's how all of our ancestors have gotten here. That's how we are here today because they got the resources and they got to survive. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people who are not here today because they didn't and they
That's right.
starved or they died from illness or some other means, someone killing them.
Mm.
So, Marx, his understanding of the world and the people who imbibe him, consciously or not, have this understanding that there used to be a day when everyone was living in harmony in a communist utopia.
Yeah.
Everyone was working together and sharing, gleefully. And everything was better back then. And we could all just focus on art and creativity. And
Mm.
that is a fundamental misunderstanding of how the world has always worked, how human nature works. It's a denial of reality.
Mm.
And when you deny reality, you are delusional and
Mhm.
you start to have a twisted sense of things. And so I think that we've seen the fruit of that. So the people who tend to fall into this. That's another just version of them, are the people who are not tethered to reality because they've never had to face it. They've actually lived a really
Ooh.
comfortable life. So
Mm.
and even those of us who in the American system who have maybe had struggles in life,
Sure.
you know, lived a hard life or lived tragic things in their life, we have
Mm.
lived in extreme comfort compared to what it would mean for us to truly have to survive in the world.
Yeah.
Find our own food, build our own shelter, like these types of things. Capitalism is what allows us to not even have to think about the reality of that.
Mm.
So,
Ooh, this is good. Okay, so this is opening up a few elements for me because you speak of this dynamic of those who have not necessarily been exposed to the elements, right? Or maybe not to the same
mhm.
degree as much of the world still is right now.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
many of these individuals just so happen to be the very same targeted group, or they're like the newfound capitalist, ironically, right? It is the
Mhm.
white, cis white male, if we want to go to
Mhm.
the top of the hierarchy. And then everything else kind of sort of rolls off of that. So then next we have the straight white woman. And
Mhm.
so, this conversation of white guilt is something obviously you're going to be getting more in depth on in your own channel, which people
Mhm.
please flood to her channel. They already will. But I want to know, what is it in a Caucasian male or female that goes, this is going to be my avenue for reaching this utopia? Or is it simply about
Mm.
significance, about belonging? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Yes, I'm about to release an episode that gets into this.
Okay.
Um, Shelby Steele is a really good place to start with
Okay.
understanding the root of this. In his book White Guilt,
Mm.
it's a really good reflection of
Still.
understanding how we got here. Um, and I don't have it because I was like mostly focused on the devil and Karl Marx. I don't have
Mhm.
it fresh off of my brain right now, but essentially what he talks about is how white people lost moral authority with this whole thing that we're talking about in terms
Mm.
of the civil rights movement inflaming racial um resentments, positioning itself off of a Christian ethos of goodwill,
Mm.
forgiveness, equality, all of these wonderful Christian tenets,
Yeah.
what they were able to do. So, as I mentioned, they were using those three main entry points, as well as educators. That kind of
Yeah.
was more so the tool, I would say. But the identity
Mhm.
categories is really where they were infiltrating. So Black folks, women,
Mhm.
LGBT was
Yeah.
later, but came, and, progressive Christians
Yeah.
were the useful idiot categories, okay?
Mm.
And I don't we're not saying that word to be, um,
No, it's not an
disparaging.
insult. That's the actual
Yeah,
terminology, right?
it's literally
Technically.
what they said. It's
Yeah.
literally
This is
so
Lenin
many
this is
times.
Lenin language. It's
Literally from the
Yeah.
source, okay?
Yeah.
So, and it just goes to show how, maniacal, how little they thought of us, because
Yeah.
I say us because I was in it. I was all up in
Yeah.
it, okay?
That's right.
So, they used those values to start to build a sense of white guilt,
Mhm.
um, for which, if you are guilty, especially if you're thinking in the Christian context, there needs to be some level of atonement. And so the way that you
Ooh.
atone is by, just constantly placating to
Mm,
whatever the demand of the victim group is, whoever you
mm,
wronged. So if Black people, the point he makes, I think is just so, it just like, whoa. What
mm,
he literally says in this clip that I'm going to show in the video, that I'm going to make, is
mhm.
that Black power is white guilt. That is how it became constructed in the 1960s. So instead of, like I was saying before, instead of Black power being something that's about truly uplifting Black people in our communities to be
Yeah.
self-sustaining, to be self-supporting, to be uplifting to each other based off of real merit instead of identity or something fake,
Mhm.
it actually became centered around this idea of white guilt. The more guilt that we could produce in white people, the more things we could get, and therefore the more power we could have.
Okay, I'm sorry. I gotta interject here real
Crazy.
quick. This is
Yeah.
mind blow. This video is gonna be on point. This is gonna be fire. Okay. The
He's
reason why
brilliant.
the reason why this is hitting home is because again, tying right back into Marxism, it's about the
Mhm.
destruction of a current system. So it
Yes.
can't exist
Yes.
by itself. It's like the capitalist model, like okay, the perfect capitalist model, free markets, we'll call it that for right
Mhm.
now, because some people still triggered by capitalism because we've been
Mhm.
brainwashed. So
Mhm.
you can create a business and I create a business, and we both have spaces to exist, right? It's not this what you call it is what they call it the one sum. What's the word I'm looking for? As far as there's only a specific pie, and if you take a larger
Mhm.
piece, there's less for everybody else, right? It's
Mhm.
not a one. I think
Mhm.
is it a one sum game? Something like that. Somebody in the comments
Yeah,
say it.
okay.
So
Yes.
with this, again, the same type of idea is it's like, why can't black power just be its own thing? No, it has to
Mhm.
destroy something for it to be communism.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
always got to be
Very good
attached to
point.
destruction.
Yes. That's the core. We didn't even really
Wow.
get to that in this conversation.
Mm,
The core is that exactly what you said is destruction.
yeah.
Destruction through criticism. So that was a
Mm,
Marxist value. Relentless criticism. That is literally from his writings. Because what that does is start the usurping process. If you can become insecure
ooh.
about who you are, your belief systems, your functional societal systems,
Mhm.
then you can be kind of, your head can be spun in any direction, because you don't have confidence anymore. So through
Hmm.
criticism, they start this process of destruction, but destruction through revolution,
Yeah.
okay, is the main thing. And it's so
Mm,
funny that there truly are no real answers, though, in communism. They really don't know
yeah.
how anything will really work effectively after the revolution.
Right.
And so many of my peers, especially in my 20s, they would always be talking about the rev. Like, this is yoga for the revolution. This is spiritual,
Spiritual rev is
meditation.
crazy. That's spiritual rev is crazy.
Literally.
Yeah.
And, they never, and I would say,
Mhm.
"What revolution are we talking about?" Like, what is the revolution? Like, and what are we doing after the revolution? And people
Mhm.
would make me feel like and sometimes say that I was being white supremacist by asking. So this
Oh,
is
yeah, because 'cause you're
how
being
they
logical. That's what it is, Amelia.
right.
Logic is white supremacy, so that makes sense.
Yes, which is
Yeah,
very insulting to the rest of
shame
us.
on you, and then there's a criticism in order to get you back in the box, so it's always, "Oh,
Yep,
okay, okay.
yep. It's a
Mm,
tricky little snake.
mm." Continue. That's good.
Well, I don't even know where we last left off.
So, okay, we were delving into white guilt because
Yep.
I understand it from as far as I can, which is as always as an outsider on 2
Mhm.
sides, right? I will never be quote unquote white, and therefore I
Mhm.
can never have white guilt. I can maybe read
Mhm.
about it and get insight, but the part that you added to it that gave me greater insight that I've ever had is this
Mhm.
thing of there still has to be an attachment to I want a utopia sort of environment. And I want to bring religion into it because we have to, right? More
Mhm.
specific Christianity. It's interesting how they have this idea of original sin being whiteness,
Mhm.
right? They have an Eden in their head technically because
Mhm.
they have this utopia
Mhm.
that used to exist and they want to get back to Eden, but
Right.
without God. So it has to
Yes.
be inherently
Yes.
materialistic. So it has to be
Yes.
identity. It has to be skin color or something
Yes. It has
tangible.
to
How
be
much money is in your
man.
bank account? Exactly.
Mhm.
So in essence, what you're saying is this concept of white guilt. They have to break themselves down, the critical theory of it all. They
Mhm.
have to break themselves down until what? They have cleansed themselves of the sin of whiteness.
Yes. That
Okay.
is the critical race theory mutation of Marxism.
Ah,
Yes. And that same thing that you
okay.
just said is applied to queerness, which is
Yeah.
the sexuality and gender mutation of Marxism,
Mm,
feminism and feminist ideology, which is the gender-based version of it. So it's the really what you're highlighting is the pseudo-religious nature
yeah.
of Marxism. Because as we have, and everything that springs from it, communism, socialism, and all of the academic theories that are based in it, because as we have explained here, it is not based in logic or reason, it is based
Mm,
in faith.
mm, yeah.
They're, they have to believe that whatever is after the revolution, which they do not have a plan for, is going to be better than what is right now.
Wow.
And the way that they blackmail people into that level of blind faith is by extorting those resentments and by
Mm,
building up the guilts and by turning us against each other. It is so incredible how not unique we are as people in the United States, specifically Black people and white people who have
mhm,
experienced this racial tension, how utterly reproduced this thing is and how identical it
mm,
was in every other country where Marxists attempted and successfully got power.
hmm,
The same thing happens, even amongst people who are highly similar and monoracial. They
yeah.
find new ways to divide the society and turn people against each other. And it always results in mass death and destruction. And we
Yeah.
have been very lucky up until now
Yeah.
that we have been spared the worst of it. Although I think because of that, we have not taken this as seriously as it should be taken.
Mm. And so, where is that you see it going? Because, I do realize that maybe this is just a tendency we all have. I know I have this, is believing that if it's happening over there, there's a lower chance of likelihood of it happening here. And even worse off, if it's never happened before, then it probably won't happen.
Mhm.
Right? That's something I've had to deconstruct myself when it comes to jihad and things of that nature. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
you think it's just those people across the
Right.
water who experience those things. Why is that? Why don't you think
Mhm.
it can happen to you?
Mhm.
It seems like hubris to me. Like if I think anything else, like death is gonna happen to every
Mhm.
person, right? So why would I not
Mhm.
think it's gonna happen to me?
Right. Yet we
So
do.
Yeah.
So many of us live our lives as if it won't ever happen.
That thing can't be it can't be me. Can't be especially
Yeah.
America, I'll be honest, it's like, what comes with that gusto and that, self-belief, I guess you could say, as a nation, which is beautiful in many aspects, even stemming from that capitalistic, can-do attitude, is also
Mhm.
eh, they will never come in my house, and so
Mhm.
you create a certain blind spot for yourself. I
Mhm.
don't need to know about that stuff, it's got nothing to do with me. That's those people over there,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, where do you see things going?
Well, I actually think in the US, there are 2 paths to this.
Okay.
On the left, it has already happened to us.
Mm,
We are cooked.
yeah,
Most of us, like I said before, have already constructed our worlds, not only our worlds, but our identities and our sense of self in a Marxist framework.
mm,
So the level of personal unraveling that needs to happen to get out of this path of self-destruction is so deep that most people's psyches can't handle that. And
mm,
most people are not willing to walk away from the lives that they've spent the last 20, 30 years building. I mean, like, even if they're
yeah,
totally miserable, even the last 5 to 10 years, I'm talking about recent graduates, like, from this, because most people get indoctrinated in university.
yeah,
So it's, for that group, we are already transformed, we're already changed, and only the most desperate amongst them who are
yeah,
the most desperate to change and the most willing to change and the most willing to admit that
mm,
we were wrong. Those are
yeah,
the people who are gonna be lucky enough to get out of it. And for the rest,
yeah,
it's a slow decomposition or an abrupt undertow suck down. And what I mean by that is the Renee Goods, the Alex Prettys, the people
mm,
who get caught up in these moments of activism
yeah,
where they think they are fighting this good, noble fight. And they don't actually realize that they are being lulled by like a Pied Piper of this sick whole legacy that we've been a part of into danger
mm,
to become a manufactured martyr, which I just had an episode on this, for the cause. And those
hmm,
people lost their lives before they even knew what was happening. They had no idea what was coming. And there's going to be a lot more people who end up like
yeah,
that because they refuse to wake up. And
yeah,
my heart breaks for them. Um, it's really sad if you really sit and think about it because they have no chance and they have no awareness and then suddenly they're gone. For the other group, for the
yeah,
ones who maybe have not been totally shaped by it, it's already come for their families. Like I
yeah,
know so many of these people, their kids are gone. Like
yeah,
their wives are gone. Their
yeah,
husbands are cross-dressing and joining trans group chats and then shooting them. Like this was a recent real case that just happened at the ice hockey tournament, I believe it was. Crazy stuff going on in the world. This stuff has really like taken us and it's serious. And I just wish people would wake up and understand the source. Like so
yeah,
much of my confusion came from like, I just don't get it. Like I'm
mm,
applying everything I learned. This is what they all bullied me into accepting as truth, and then I carried it out. I'm
mm,
following it by the letter as much as I can, and my life is horrible. I hate my relationships.
mm,
Everything doesn't make sense. No one is speaking the truth. What's
mm,
going on? I don't get it. Why? This is why. So this book for me, and I highly recommend the audiobook too if you're not a big reader. It is thick,
yeah,
but the audiobook is like very fun the way that they film it, so you can really get through it. Um, it answered so many questions that I had, and it just snapped me into reality.
mm,
When I was like I
wow.
felt like I was on the outside of it banging on a glass, like
So I'm so thankful you said that because you're also then the testimony, right? Like you are the example that even if it's just one, because that one is like you said, somebody's daughter, that one is somebody's son, or
Mhm.
and so that one matters because
Mhm.
you mean the world to your family, that person means the world to theirs and their people. And so, that is the hope. And I want to end it on this because you always bring it back to this because this is the ultimate solution. And that's in even the context of this. How many people have written a Karl Marx biography but missed out the solution, the true solution,
Mhm.
which is God in the center of your society and a center of your life,
Mhm.
right? And so,
Right.
that there's a solution. It's like there actually is a solution. There's the reason we have the deficit is because we're filling that void that is supposed to be filled, right? We're supposed to find our identity in something.
Mhm.
It just was never supposed to be something that stems from the problem.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
like if sin is a problem and we are sin filled, then we
Mhm.
inherently become the problem and we need a solution outside of ourselves.
Yes, and I think that just what really woke me up about this book
Mm,
was the reality of how relentless communists go after religion,
yeah.
and specifically this idea of abolishing God. Like they go way
Mm,
beyond trying to go after the churches. They want to
yeah.
abolish God. Understanding that that was such a core part of communism and Marxism as a whole, and understanding the very idealizing of Satan that
Yeah.
Marx regularly did in his fictional works, because he was
Yeah.
actually a failed artist,
Yeah.
a failed poet and writer, which is like the just says so much. But
Yeah.
that being the core of it really made me question, had I really been shaped by this? Had my
Mm,
relationship with spirituality, and which was really based off of a deep disdain for Christianity
yeah.
and a unwillingness to recognize God as God, and more
Mm,
so wanting to see God as the universe and
yeah.
as anything other than what the Bible said God was,
Mm,
um, if that had been shaped by this conditioning. And I was forced to realize that if every other part of my identity had been built by this Marxist conditioning, then definitely that part had to.
wow.
And once you start to open that door and keep walking down it,
Mm,
you'll be surprised what you'll find. And I
yeah.
just encourage people, whatever their belief system is, wherever their spirituality is landing right now, to at least open the door and see
Yeah.
what is there.
Absolutely. If
And
you're gonna
I
read
think you're going to
everything
be
else,
shook.
yeah. It's like if you're willing to read everything else, like why was that the one book I was avoiding? I was willing to read
Yeah.
the Gita, the Siddhartha Buddha. I didn't care. I would pick it up.
Hmm.
But that Bible,
Yeah.
it's like that's the one I didn't care. I would pick up a Quran. I didn't care. It
Hmm.
was simply one text. And again, like you said, simply entertain the idea, invite the idea. You've
Hmm.
already invited probably every other idea, like turning, from a boy to a girl or something that's
Right.
that fundamental. How much
Right.
more when it comes to something that is psychological and spiritual? So, last words, and then we could wrap up for the folks. If you had like a megaphone to the world right now, what is your message? What's been top of mind for you?
Um, my message would just be to read this book.
Mhm. I like that.
Read The Devil and Karl Marx, and then read, there's a part in the book that uh, is a quote from Whittaker Chambers, who was an ex-communist
Hmm.
who's giving testimony during the 1950s when they were investigating communist infiltration
Hmm.
into the United States, which we didn't have time to get to. But talking
Yeah.
about those Marxist tactics, it's so
Hmm.
important and interesting. But he says a quote that is something like, Marx and his minions made the first mistake of man way back in the Garden of Eden, which is falling for
Mm.
the lie of the serpent, which
Yeah.
is ye shall be as gods. And I
Mm.
found that part of the book really explained a lot for me. It really opened my mind up
Yeah.
to understanding the Christian worldview and what
Mm.
the Bible was even talking about with the Garden of Eden, what even happened with that situation.
Mm.
And it led me to actually read the Garden of Eden story in the Bible in
Mm.
Genesis for the first time. Because a lot of us
Wow.
think we know that story because the
Yeah.
symbolism is everywhere, but most of us have actually never read it or read it with adult
Mm.
eyes. And I just encourage people just to like open the Bible up and just read that passage
Wow.
and read this book
Mm.
and think about communism's mission to abolish God and
Mm.
the things that we've talked about today in terms of when you abolish God, that leaves you as God. Ye
Yeah.
shall be as gods.
Yeah.
And that was a lie because we aren't God. We're
That's right.
humans.
Can't even remember
And
where
I
your keys is
just,
at.
yeah,
Like, that's crazy. You're talking about I'm God. Can't even remember what you ate this morning, and you're God.
right.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Like,
Exactly.
that's
So I just encourage people to
yeah.
think about it. Just
Mm.
mull on that for a minute. Just be brave enough to go there. And I
Mm.
think they'll be really shocked by what they find.
I do too. I think that's gonna be powerful. Just open up to in the beginning. So, lastly, my last words is make sure to follow Amelia. She has a channel called The Mirror Reflecting the Left, but she's also got a Patreon account, which you guys need to
Thank
join because
you.
it is excellent. Yeah, yeah. Y'all need to flood to her page and flood to her Patreon, and and we'll continue to show up in this way. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Much
Thank you for having
appreciated.
me. I always
Of
have so much
course.
fun with you.
Yeah, likewise. We'll be back. We'll be back. We got some stuff. Yeah, we got some stuff. Tactics is probably gonna be the next one. So folks, stay tuned.
Perfect.
All right. Till next time. Peace.
Bye.
Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace. Who are you praying to? In quiet times, the one you are relenting. When seeking higher